Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or evening. My name is Sarah Moskowitz. I'm Executive Director at the Citizens Utility Board, and this is a reunion Facebook Live I'm having here with my predecessor at CUB, David Kolata. How's it going, Dave?
It's doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's just like old times.
Old times, a little bit of a reunion.
Yeah. So everyone, I don't know how much folks have been paying attention. Dave's still out there. He's still around. He's still in the industry. He's working on some innovative tools to help people go electric at his new gig. I can't believe it's been over a year already.
It has.
He left.
Time goes fast, huh?
Yeah. So, I'd love to hear your elevator pitch on what you're doing these days with your time.
Yeah, so I'm at a company called Sealed. We're a climate tech company with a mission to eliminate home energy waste and electrify all homes. And so we provide software and solutions to contractors at the end of the day to make it easy for those contractors and therefore households to benefit from incentive and rebate programs for heat pumps, for weatherization, for heat pump water heaters. There's just a lot of programs that are out there. Some of this, of course, much of it spurred by the Inflation Reduction Act, where you have a couple big programs with really large rebates across the country to encourage energy efficiency and electrification. But we also bundle in utility programs and city programs. And so the goal here is to make it as easy as possible for contractors to reduce friction so that they can take advantage of this. And really, you can kind of think about it as trying to align kind of state and federal public policy goals with contractors. At the end of the day, most people make their decisions about HVAC or about weatherization with a contractor they trust over the kitchen table. And we're trying to make that discussion go as well as it possibly can by making it easy for contractors to take advantage of incentives.
Cool. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to fix my microphone here. I think that's important because, of course, at CUB, we hear from people who are interested in taking advantage of rebates and new technologies to help make their homes more affordable to run and cleaner and all that. But they often run into issues with the contractors. Not to badmouth contractors, but it's a lot to keep track of. Their job is to install a thing, and keeping track of all of the incentives that are out there can be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, contractors, they want to do jobs, right? They want to do what they're good at, installing projects. They don't probably want to do paperwork. They don't want to have to hire people to see, who's eligible for what. There's a lot of costs associated with that. And, one of the things going on here, because to get a little bit more into the policy depths here, we are big proponents of what is known as measured savings in the energy efficiency space, where you're looking at real data and you're paying essentially only for savings that you can prove through quantitative analysis. And one of the advantages of measured savings, there's a whole host of advantages that I think there's a consumer protection angle. There's certainly a grid reliability angle that we could talk about later, perhaps. But one of the big things is that, traditionally speaking, when we focused on energy efficiency, you want to have quality control, right? You want to make sure that the jobs are done well. And of course, that there isn't any fraud. But our focus has been very much on the inputs to prevent, fraud or to encourage, good jobs. So, take a picture of this, fill out this form, do an extensive audit. All these things are fine, but it adds a lot of friction to the process. And because of that friction, a lot of contractors are like, well, wait a minute. Even if I could afford to hire someone to do this, I don't really want to. It's not core to what I do as a business. I just want to install projects. And so we have this disconnect between the programs that are out there that are very beneficial and the contractor community that is sort of overwhelmed with all the friction. An advantage of measured savings is that you can switch from sort of an input quality control model to more of an output quality control model, because at the end of the day, you're looking at did it work or not, right? It's still, you're going to have some inputs, of course. You want to make sure that the work was done and it was done by a qualified contractor. But at the end of the day, what we do when we put our capital on the line, we take the performance risk with measured savings. And this enables a world where it's much lower friction. It's much easier for contractors to be empowered. And, in our case, we pay immediately upon a job being finished. So all of this is trying to make the contractor's job as easy as it can be, but to incentivize a race to the top as well, so that they're not, just doing the bare minimum job. Because the way measured savings works, the more savings you get, the higher the rebate, which creates an incentive structure to encourage the best quality work possible.
Well, okay. First, it's not. I can tell you've explained this before. This is what you've spent your.
This is my gig.
I asked for your elevator speach, and
that was an elevator. Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a good one. But I want to underline one, like a kind of a meta point here, is that it's good for the contractor because it incentivizes them to do the best job possible to seal up the home or bring about the energy savings, right? But it's also good as a ratepayer advocate. This is really important to me, and this is why it's such a no-brainer, and why it makes so much sense to me that when you left CUB after so many years, you went to a company like this, because it's also about accountability for ratepayer dollars that go towards funding these programs, or in the case of IRA incentives, of taxpayer dollars. And I think a lot of people, like, energy efficiency programs are worth it. They pay off for ratepayers, but when you have the kind of modeled savings, there are guesstimates involved, and the extent to which we can actually measure the actual real life savings of these investments that are being paid for by all of us, the better it is, and the better argument we can make for further such investments in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It is not a coincidence that I ended up in SEALD, because of course it's a worldview that we've always held at CUB. And just to make it a point here at the top, there are some instances where modeled savings or even deemed savings are appropriate. This isn't an either or, but I do think that we'll increasingly see more and more measured savings programs, and I think the main reason is this accountability aspect. I think you're 100% correct. You especially see this dynamic in states maybe that have Republican governors, or people who don't have established EE programs, where people will say sometimes, we get that efficiency works. I think it's relatively popular across the country, but sometimes people will say, hey, but how do we really know what it's achieving, right? And this provides an answer at the end of the day. And there is a lot more data out there. There's a lot more data analytics that you can use. This is not rocket science. But by setting up a framework with accountability at its core, I think consumer advocates, legislators, utilities, really everyone can have more confidence that the efficiency is real. And, I know that this may be getting a little bit too far afield. Maybe you want to talk about it a little bit later, but it does relate. Like right now, as because you part of filing a great protest at FERC, PJM, the energy that runs the energy market that ComEd is in and Northern Illinois is in, is trying to get rid of energy efficiency in their capacity construct. And the main thrust of their argument, to the extent it's legitimate, is that, we don't really know if these programs are working, right? It does point to a lack of quantification. So I do think that this whole accountability and realness of it all provides a lot of public policy benefits that can take efficiency to the next level, because it does work. There's no question it works, but it can work better. And by incorporating more measured savings approaches, I think that's how we get to where we want to go.
Yeah. And it is part of a larger whole.
It's part of a larger whole. That's right.
On a panel yesterday talking about, the new buzz scare word or phrase, load growth.
Yeah.
And you see that tossed around as an explanation for skyrocketing capacity costs in the wholesale market, results. And it's just, it's kind of become this boogeyman. And I spent a lot of my time unpacking that in, conversations with folks in the industry and consumer advocates and with the public. But I mean, one of the main kind of points that rises to the top is like, now is not the time to be foreclosing on any of the tools at our disposal to meet the requirements of like the new age in energy usage and generation that we've entered. And there are solutions focused on the supply side around generation mix and interconnection and transmission. But then there's also all of the tools that are on the demand side to help us be more efficient, less energy waste on the part of the end user, load flexibility, like encouraging usage at off-peak times. And there's like this whole plethora of tools. And so a lot of what we're doing at CUB is just making sure that, all of these are being valued and supported.
Yeah, the demand side, my own personal view, and this is all, remains to be seen. We're definitely going to be seeing, it looks like, some load growth. I tend to think that, some of the scenarios right now are probably overstated with some of the AI data centers. I'm guessing at the end of the day, there's a lot of double counting going on. But, that doesn't really get around the core point, which is that more than ever, we need to make sure the demand side is fully enabled. And there's a lot of ways, to do that. And if we don't, it's going to be particularly troublesome for states that have appropriately ambitious climate change goals. Illinois is, structurally speaking, I think, very good shape. But there are some states on the East Coast, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, where they can still do it, but it's going to be harder, right? And you have to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of the demand side solutions, because one thing that's also true, not only does efficiency work, it's also in most cases, maybe even almost all cases, the lowest cost resource. And now that we are awash in data, and there are new technologies being developed every single day that makes response and, as you say, grid flexibility easier and easier, we have to do that. And if we don't, we're going to be in for making our lives needlessly complicated on the paths that we are. So that's why I think that there's a certain urgency to all these issues. But at the same token, if we get it right, there's a lot of real opportunities there too.
Yeah. Well, okay. So enough about serious stuff. I know that you really miss it here at CUB.
I do.
To underline that, I'll tell you, I got an email this morning that included a photograph of a flyer that a door-to-door salesperson had left on somebody's doorstep in Belleville that included a printout of one of our blog posts about energy prices from like a year ago. And, so it's basically like a salesperson using CUB materials to pitch their whatever it is, probably sketchy thing. And I'm just like, some things never change.
Some things never change, do they? Yeah.
Oh, it's been a while since I've seen something like that. But yeah, so there we go. Somebody's invoking our stuff to sell their BS. So other than that, what do you miss the most?
Oh, first and foremost, I miss the people. I miss working with you, Sarah. I miss, everyone on the staff. I think we have a tremendous staff at CUB, and the people who've moved through there have moved on, to great things. So it's the culture, it's the people. Certainly the mission, I think, is incredibly important, probably more important now than ever, even though it's always been important. And so, we're working, as we started this, I'm working essentially in an adjacent space, but it's not, it isn't, of course, directly kind of consumer focused. And I think that consumer voice is such an important one, especially at a time when we're going through an energy transition that has great promise, but there's lots of issues to work through. This load growth issue now with AI data centers being thrown on top of it sort of ramps up the pressure. So yeah, there's certainly elements that I miss, but the main thing is just working with y'all.
I believe you when you say that, because when people ask me the favorite thing about working at CUB for me is the people.
It's a really good environment, you know, it really is. And we've got a lot of, you know, CUB always had dedicated people who take this seriously. They're professional, but they're problem solvers, and you know, are really, there's no consumer organization, you know, across the country that you know, is as successful, I think, as CUB Illinois is. I mean, which isn't to denigrate anyone, but we have so many pieces of the puzzle. You know, particularly with, you know, adding outreach to it all, and big consumer education efforts. So, you know, I think it's a very important organization, and I was proud to be associated with it, and I'm proud to be you know, an alumnus. And yeah, and what I missed is just the day-to-day interaction with you all.
Yeah, likewise. But it's cool. You know, I told you before you left CUB that you were only allowed to leave if you responded to my texts, and I appreciate it. Yeah,
I do. Yeah, that's right. And you know, I mean, Sealed, we are, you know, we're based in New York, but we are, you know, a remote first workplace. And so, I mean, I've had to do a lot of travel for my work because I've got a lot more states now to pay attention to. But you know, at the same token, I'm still in Chicago. I'm still, you know, engaged in the issue set here. And Illinois is one of our key states. So, you know, haven't moved that far at the end of the day.
No, there is no escape.
You can find me.
There's no real escape. I tell everybody when they leave CUB, you know, even if you were only at the organization for a brief period, it changes your life.
Yeah. I was going to say, is that like the Hotel California? But that's kind of a negative vibe, right? I never could quite figure that out.
Don't get that song stuck in my head.
Not right. There's all kinds of our urban.
We need to move on.
No Eagles. It's a no Eagles Friday.
Listen, I should probably get my punk credentials revoked because I don't hate the Eagles. All right. But
we talked about this before. This is a total aside. The Eagles, I mean, it's plateaued now, but Eagles are one of the bands that the older I got, the more I like them. I mean, you know, they're not going to end up being like, you know, my all-time favorite band, right? But I'm like, they have a lot of good songs, you know?
Oh man, that is a sign. That's on the list of you.
Right? There'll be a study. Does that forecast dementia or something? So
is there anything that we're working on, like at CUB Illinois, that you're kind of watching now, maybe from the sidelines more, where you just wish that you could just jump in? Like you're just like, gosh, that's a fun fight, or are you just kind of like over all of it?
No, I mean, I think that I mean, some of these fights we're watching, right? I mean, I do think that as frustrating as it is of the stuff going on at PJM is really, really, really important. And, you know, that's something that we don't really have the time right now to be focused on, but that's one where I think I would like to be a little bit more engaged on. I think, you know, a lot of the direct, we'll be involved in this. I wouldn't say in an ancillary basis, but sort of observing and participating the whole future of gas issue here, and particularly when you get down to the brass tacks on the people's gas system. That's an incredibly challenging and incredibly important, and that's a kind of issue. I mean, I've always liked that sort of combination. And so even though, again, we're still, you know, generally involved in that issue set, being able to, you know, to really focus on it and really have it be, you know, a day-to-day priority, as it were. I do kind of sometimes wish, I had more time, you know, to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's my lament these days, is like, there are so many rabbit holes I want to dive down and just learn everything I can about, because there's so much there, and I don't have time to do it. I was whining to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, being like, there's no end to the work. It's just, and it's all new and hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, not to be a broke, and not to be a broke, well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, you do have things that kind of throw fire on the flame, or gas on the flame, I should say. Fire on the flame. What does that mean? Like, I mean, like the whole load growth discussion, because some of these projections are hugely dramatic. I mean, I've been doing a fair amount of work in Texas. In Texas, they're saying that their entire load will double potentially by like 2032. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And to be fair, I don't think your average Texas policymaker is necessarily sure that that's going to happen. But to the extent that something like that would occur, that obviously is a huge issue to manage. Which isn't to say that it can't be done, but it puts the importance on these energy transition issues, and really makes the importance of consumer advocates like CUB, you know, it heightens it even more than it always has been, because you could imagine a lot of scenarios where that load growth conversation and doesn't turn out well, right? We overinvest, we spend a ton of money, we don't take full advantage of demand side programs. We go all in on one type of solution. We don't have the kind of planning we need. And next thing you know, consumers are not doing all that well. So, you know, lots of very important things out there right now.
And a lot of the solutions are linked to, or lack of solutions are linked politically. You know, and I think a lot of what we have to do as a nonpartisan organization is kind of wade through a lot of that. You know, a lot of the you know, Chicken Little, the sky is falling stuff serves to further the interests of a particular party in this debate. You know, and when you get freaked out and pushed into some hasty decisions, such as investing in a certain kind of generation or keeping uneconomic generation open, you know, which isn't necessarily the cheapest or even fastest. If you're talking about building a new fossil plant, you know, like solution, you know, so it's kind of like, all right, well, let's look at all of this and not just default to this thing that this one kind of side is clamoring for.
Totally. That's right.
So, hesitate to ask this, but like, so what's the, I guess I'll put it like this, like, what's the best thing about like your new gig now? Like what is it? Is it that it's new, or?
Well, I mean, certainly an element are the new challenges. I will say, and I referred to this a little bit earlier, I do like, I mean, you know, technically, I have our policy team at SEALD is me and my colleague Savannah, who's awesome. Technically, we've got 50 states. Not, you know, as a practical reality, we have priorities, and you know, but I do like, and this is something you couldn't, for obvious reasons, at CUB, you couldn't really get that involved in other states. There were regional issues with PJM. And so I do like kind of getting to know the circumstances and the players and how the issues could play out in you know, in other parts of the country. And so I mentioned Texas earlier. I think that's really interesting because, you know, one could go in assuming that there's sort of massive ideological differences, and of course there are some, like in the grand scheme of politics. And, you know, there are certain perspectives, like you're not going to see folks talk that much about climate change necessarily in Texas, but you are seeing people focus very much on grid reliability and the demand side. Like they're not as different as people might think. So if there's one thing, I mean, I you know, that really jumps out to me that I really like, that's new, because I like the people I work with at SEALD. They're awesome. And that's the same as CUB. But it's the ability to get in the trenches in more other states and more environments.
I think I that's another item on my really long list of things I wish I had more time to dig into, is how folks are working to solve some of the problems we face in other states. Because I feel like, you know, a lot of us are facing all of the same issues. Of course, all of our states have different kind of constructs and are coming from different places and different regulatory, like structures and what have you. But there's a lot to learn from each other as far as the states go. So it's fun to get to go to a conference and chat with folks in other states and get some cool ideas. But there'll never be enough time for all of that. So I envy that.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, and like I said, I do like that learning experience, and just the issues at the end of the day are pretty much the same issues. How you get to a solution that can change a little bit, but that's been very rewarding and interesting to me.
Well, one of the things that you're spending a lot of time on, of course, is IRA implementation. The Inflation Reduction Act allocates a bunch of money to the states.
Yep.
So the states can set up programs to help homes become more efficient and electrify when it makes sense. And my understanding is that all the different states are all over the place when it comes to implementing this. And a lot of what you've been doing is kind of suggesting maybe some more prudent ways to implement.
Yeah, it's a slog, and it's all, because you've got 50 states. Only South Dakota isn't accepting the money. So that's good that everyone is taking the money, and there's close to $9 billion between two programs. There's the HOMES program, Homeowners Managing Energy Savings, and that's kind of whole home weatherization, and it's technology neutral, but heat pumps at the end of the day. And then you have the HERE program. These are point of sale kind of electrification rebates for various technologies, and states are developing their approaches and their implementation plans as we speak. And every state's doing something a little bit different. As you might imagine, our big sort of number one policy aim here has been, we want to make sure that as many states as possible include the measured savings pathway, because in homes, the way it works, you can do measured savings, you can do the latest and greatest modeled savings, because this is a market transformation section of the bill. So it's not just your old school measure modeled, it requires some new modeling. So you can either do measured, modeled, or both. Our core recommendation, we call it the path of no regrets, and to us it's very commonsensical, is to do both, because we think they can work well together, and that they both have some advantages, even though measured is the future. And I think a number of states now are moving in that direction, but there are still issues, and there's a lot of whack-a-mole. Because these are new programs. The money is routed through what are known as state energy offices. Some state energy offices have a fair amount of capacity, meaning employees. Some have one person, like Idaho, for example. So they vary greatly in capacity. And you're dealing with something that's sort of a lot of, I don't mean bureaucracy in a negative way here, but a lot of it is just trying to make sure that the bureaucracy, all layers, all departments are moving in the same direction. So that IRA is certainly the short-term big opportunity. We are starting to see states like Wisconsin and Michigan move forward, I think, in good ways. After that, though, it really is this whole demand side. The IRA is where we're starting. But we're also engaged in, and will be even more, in questions around, well, how do we make sure the demand side can participate fairly in all of our energy markets, for example?
And I'm going to want to talk to you about that. I am still in all my spare time trying to read up more on market rules for demand response aggregators to participate in, say, PJM. I saw an email. I don't know if you're on this email list. I saw an email that was getting pretty mad at FERC for allowing PJM to demand all this kind of data from third-party DR aggregators, but the DR aggregators are saying they can't get that data from the utilities, and it stinks. Like, we have AMI, we have advanced meters here in Illinois. We should be doing this. So yes. I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, sure.
that's on my list too. But I want to get back really quick to Illinois because I know Matt, who's behind the scenes emceeing this, and a lot of us at CUB we've been excited about IRA incentives for a while. There was a lot of fanfare when the bill passed. We're excited about these programs hitting the streets in Illinois. We've been talking about it, and talking about it, and talking about it. What have you heard? And I understand, like Illinois, like the Illinois State Energy Office was one of the small ones. They've staffed a bit.
Yeah.
Illinois, it's hard for Illinois to, do procurement and get vendors and all that stuff to run this stuff. So it's been taking a minute. We're all really eager for updates on when this is going to hit in our state. Have you heard anything?
I have. It's still, I think, somewhat in flux. And let me preface all this by saying that, rolling out programs like this can be complicated. The IRA passed over 2 years ago, and there's just a few states that are moving, that have programs up and running. So it's been slower than I think people wanted. I think the federal government, the Department of Energy would admit that. I think a lot of states would admit that. We are now starting to get to brass tacks. I think most programs will be up and running, by the end of Q1 of next year. Illinois is on a little slower trajectory. As we understand it, and they're planning on focusing, at least to start, on putting it through their weatherization assistance program. In order to do that, what you need to have, I mentioned the modeled issue. You need the latest and greatest software. The standard is known as BPI 2400. BPI is the Building Performance Institute. It sets standards, right? You can think of it as like UL. 2400, as far as we can tell, is a random number. It probably isn't, but as far as I can tell, it's a random number. Anyway, it's required.
It's like the latest.
So as we understand it, Illinois is planning internally, to try to upgrade its weatherization assistance program software to make it BPI 2400 compliant. We'll see if they're able to do that. I think our hope here is that we can broaden the discussion a little bit. I can understand why Illinois might want to start with the weatherization assistance program. It is an existing program. But one of the things that Illinois has, as you know, they've been a leader on kind of clean energy innovation, particularly energy efficiency with business model development. And one of the things that we fear is that a missed opportunity here to take advantage of some of the great resources we have. For example, AMI, the advanced meters. There's a lot of really cool, what are known as virtual power plant kind of solutions with time, location, and greenhouse gases that I was just at a conference. We met with the DOE people. They're really excited. They really want to see states try, as part of this market innovation element of homes, to incorporate time, location, and greenhouse gases. And Illinois is really well positioned to do that because we have the data. With the Clean Energy Jobs Act and the Future Energy Jobs Act, we've set a lot of the infrastructure. We'd really like to see Illinois include that in their plan. Right now, it's unclear when and if that will happen. But the long and short of it is, as we understand it, Illinois plans to launch the homes program focused on weatherization assistance in multifamily probably next summer. And the question is, what else will they do, and will they be open to making sure that other sectors are included? And from our perspective, will they really take full advantage of what measured savings can provide? We're hopeful, but it's a little slower than we would like at the end of the day. And not trying to throw Illinois under the bus. There's a lot of states that's a similar sort of description of moving slower than we might like. Yeah,
it's been a challenge, but just talking about the software requirements for the program, that's actually a huge thing. As someone who is dealt with our database at CUB. This is
it's going to be interesting. I mean, Illinois, as we understand it, this is a unique approach. Like most states that we are aware of will do an RFP for an implementer, because this is a funded mandate. It's a funded mandate program. You don't have, it's actually not a mandate because you don't have to take the money, but almost every state except for South Dakota is accepting the money, because why wouldn't you? And there's money for administration in there. So a lot of states are doing, RFPs for program implementers to handle these types of things. It sounds to us like Illinois, and maybe that you alluded to this earlier, maybe some of it is around, it can be difficult to do procurements. It's kind of a pain in the ass. I totally understand that. They're going a different route where it sounds like they're going to use internal resources, internal software developers, those types of things, to try to update their software. You could view that as a state capacity kind of building exercise, and hopefully it works. I do think that what we would like to see is we are working on this, and to be fair to the State Energy Office, they've told us that they'd like to do a measured savings program at some point. We'd like to see it sooner rather than later, and we think that there are real opportunities to get something launched quickly in that front, and particularly with regards to time and greenhouse gas emissions. We think that there's some really cool stuff that Illinois almost uniquely could do. There's some other states, but really well positioned, that would be very innovative and really fit in with how, if you look at the last 15, 20 years in Illinois and energy policy, it would fit into that story of clean energy innovation and taking advantage and really thinking through regulatory structures to make sure that occurs.
But this is all going to happen regardless of what happens in the presidential election, right? That's a question we get a lot. Like, are these?
Look, you never know, and I think it's fair to say that if Vice President Harris wins, then certainly the IRA, there won't be any changes. There may be even some growth. If former President Trump wins, we'll see. One of the things we've been very encouraged about, though, is that there was a lot of talk, especially when I first got this job. There was a question of, well, to be frank, are red states going to take the money? It came from the Inflation Reduction Act. And what we've seen on the programs that we're talking about today is they're not controversial. There may be some parts of the IRA that Republican states don't like, but it's not the efficiency portions of it. In fact, very early on, there was some reporting that Governor DeSantis in Florida was rejecting the money. That didn't turn out to be true. In fact, he accepted the Homes and Here funding. And not only that, Florida has decided to make measured kind of the standard. Florida is going to be doing, we think, I just talked to their State Energy Office person at a conference who was great. Florida is going to be doing some, we think, really cool and innovative stuff on measured savings. And not to be too critical of Massachusetts, but I think they deserve it in this instance. Massachusetts does not plan to be doing very innovative stuff when it comes to the homes program. And I think it's actually kind of instructive. There's almost like an innovator's dilemma here. Massachusetts traditionally has led the ACEEE rankings. As you know, Sarah, they're number one in efficiency. And so they've got this way of doing things, right? They've got existing programs. And so we understand the temptation just to say, oh, we've got all this other great stuff. But you know what they don't have is a measured savings program. And if there's a state in the union that really should have a measured savings program, it's Massachusetts. They spend $1 billion a year on energy efficiency. And it's only a matter of time before a policymaker, a governor, someone says, well, wait a minute, we can't count any of that for grid reliability purposes because New England ISO wants quantification and we just haven't done that. We think that's very, very short-sighted. Florida, who would have expected? Florida is like, you know what? Accountability, measured savings, accountability, that we like that. We don't really have any programs, but we want to lead. So, I'm not, again, I mean, I think that it kind of shows that this has broader support than people might think. And so I'm personally speaking, not really worried about whatever happens in the election.
Cool. Good to hear. That's an interesting perspective. And you're right. I think a lot about, it's cool to be on the early end of making things happen and offering beneficial programs. But then you kind of get, you could get set in your ways. You might put yourself into a system, and it could be hard to put the genie back into the bottle because you have.
I think that that's right. So again, I mean, we're hoping that Massachusetts, and by the way, we do think eventually Massachusetts will change. They're going to have to. I don't mean to be throwing them as much under the bus as it may sound like, but I do think it's very, very instructive. I think your average person, even your average person in the energy space who's very, very aware of it, would not necessarily expect that when it comes to energy efficiency, Florida would be more innovative than Massachusetts. But in fact, that is what we're seeing. And I do think for us as a broader stakeholder community, that has some important lessons. And it does, in a world of load growth where we're trying to figure out how to make sure that particularly demand side is fully actualized, is really puts a finer point on it, on the importance. And when I said earlier about the whack-a-mole or the trying to connecting with the bureaucracies, one of the things we'd like to see more and more of is like the PUC discussions, like the public utility regulation discussions, united with the state energy office discussions, united with the environmental discussions around climate change. Right now, a lot of states, Illinois is not, I don't think one of those, but in a lot of states, they're pretty siloed. And so you'll have the PUC wanting to lead on the demand side. And then you'll have the state energy office for just like, oh, we have these existing programs, let's just do that. And that innovation angle, the market transformation angle, which is really the importance of the homes program in particular. I mean, it's $4.5 billion nationwide, which is really good, but still kind of only a drop in the bucket, which ultimately needs to happen here. So you have to really transform the market. It's enough to do that, but uniting those various conversations, making sure that all levers of the government, both within states and regions, are driving in the same direction of what we need to see, is really, really important. And something that I like I like being involved in those types of things. It's fun, even though at times it can be a little bit frustrating, and sometimes it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. But I do think we're making,
that's why we're so busy. You're right. Yeah. Like running between all of these different entities and all these different layers of oversight. And yes. I mean, I think it's fun to work at a place where you kind of have the freedom or the flexibility or the nimbleness to kind of go where you need to go to
100%.
make sure that you're getting the right programs out there. So
100%.
So I can't believe it's been like 45 minutes or something.
I know, we're just like
it always happens, right?
Yeah. I know, we just get going, get rolling. We can do this probably for at some point we'd run out of things to say, but probably
it'll take a minute. Yeah. I appreciate you, Dave. It's been fun getting to catch up with you. It's nice winding down my week, and maybe I'll probably see you soon, and maybe we'll do this again.
Yeah, are you going to the IEC thing tonight?
I'm going to be there. Are you?
I will see you there.
All right.
I will see you there. The green prom, as they call it, right?
Green prom. I am not wearing a prom dress.
Thankfully, I am not either, although I'm totally cool with that if someone did. I don't even know what the hell I'm going to wear. I'll probably more than a t-shirt. I do have a Nickelback hoodie now someone bought me, so.
I'll give you $1 if you wear that. I'll give you $1.
Yeah, I don't think I have quite that level of. Well, I'm not sure what the proper adjective is, but
I'm not that old yet.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks as always, Dave. I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you. Later.